So, yeah, I couldn't resist. I just had to try it out. Yep, the new M1 Pro MacBook Pro. Yeah, let's get started.
It's cool.
Welcome back to The Colorblind Architect Does Archicad, and today we've got a special episode. In fact, yeah, that's right, I've got two cameras, and of course, even though I told my son, hey, don't put yourself in camera because you're a child, and but that's okay.
You can cut it out.
What's that?
You can cut it out.
Of course I could, but
I think it's funnier if you do.
well, sure. Here we go. So what we're going to do today is we're going to test out Archicad 25 on my old late 2016 MacBook Pro, fully loaded. Now I should mention, when I bought this was about $4,200 with it fully loaded. At the time, the max RAM was 16 gigs of RAM. The best video card in there is an M580 AMD video card, and it had 4 gigs of RAM and 2 terabytes of SSD solid state storage. And as you can tell, it's really thin, really beautiful, but as you open up the top, a lot of times it makes a snapping sound. Plus, this one had a crappy butterfly keyboard. Yeah, was never really happy about that, but unlike some people, my butterfly keyboard never went bad on me. My biggest complaint with this was the touch bar. Not because of what shows up on the touch bar. It was more because stupid escape key. Can you believe it doesn't have a freaking escape key?
I know.
So, we're going to compare that against the brand new M1 Pro MacBook Pro. Now, just to be clear, that's a stupid name. The MacBook Pro already has the word Pro in it, but anyways, the point is the processor in here, the SoC, the system on a chip, is the M1 Pro with the 16 gig configuration, the 16 graphics cores with the 10 CPU cores, and this thing's a thing of beauty as well. But unlike the 2016 version, this is actually a lot thicker. And also, look, it's got the MagSafe, it's got the USB-Cs, it also has a hard, yes, an actual headphone jack. It's got an HDMI port. No more dongle to hook up the second monitor.
Let's
really
go.
Nice. And then an SD card slot. So nice. And then you open it up and it's just a thing of beauty. Even though that stupid notch is there, I mean, let's face it, it's not that big of a deal because it's in the menu bar that's always blocking the rest of the app anyways. And so, yeah. Now, the thing to remember about Archicad is Graphisoft has officially stated that it is not going to be available until 2022, the version that is specifically optimized for the Apple Silicon Macs. That means that the existing builds of Archicad up through the latest version, Archicad 25, is still written for x86 Intel processors. So that theoretically should be a strike against the new MacBook, because obviously this is having converted through Rosetta 2 in order to present the information on Archicad. Now, I'm going to include this in the description down below. This website, this performance review with the M1. Now this came out well before the M1 Pro and the M1 Max. I should also note that I was going to get an M1 Max, but you can't get them until December, and I was just too excited to try this out. So I'm probably going to buy the M1 Max once it's more readily available, and then sell this one on eBay. But with that said, let's get started with our test. Now, to be fair, both of these computers are going to be running on battery power. And so I'm going to go ahead and get this going. Now, all right. Now, obviously, I've walked over to the other side of the table because I want you to actually be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to go ahead and kneel down, and we're going to do the side-by-side speed tests on a few things. And I'm also going to show a few speed tests doing the exact same thing on my iMac Pro at work, which is a $6,500 machine that my company bought me for use. That one is a killer machine. I also have a Windows machine. It's an old Windows machine that we're going to show the same speed test. And also a Hackintosh. Yes, that's right. A Windows machine where I've loaded the Mac operating system on it. And that's really annoying.
Thank you.
Bad video making. Okay, but that's okay. So let's get started. Now, both of these, we're just gonna go ahead and get to Archicad 25 in the dock, and I'm just gonna click them at the same time.
I think you right clicked.
I think I did. You're right. Let's try that again, because apparently I suck.
You suck at everything. Okay.
All right, here we go. We're opening up Archicad 25. It looks like the Intel was slightly faster on the opening of the program, but once it got to this, pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go ahead and select the local file that we have selected to use. This is the same one that I presented on the creating camera fly-throughs video. Check that video out.
Don't watch mine. Just kidding.
Okay, let's see how fast the file opens. Click OK. And of course it would help if I could run licenses on both, but obviously one I had to choose to be the demo. So, open with exclusive access. That's fine.
Yeah, we're on it.
So we are now waiting for this one to still show up. Okay. So far it looks like
Speed fast.
the Intel is going slightly faster on the opening. Now this is something to be expected because
obviously it's meant for the Intel.
yes, it is expected to be for the Intel, and also this is something that Graphisoft has actually reported in their own findings. Like I said, I'm going to link that down below, the website where Graphisoft went through with the M1 Macs to explain how the performance would go. Obviously, I'm very excited for 2022 when we get an Apple Silicon optimized.
Yeah.
Yes, an Apple Silicon optimized version of Archicad.
Which will be like just epic.
Now, so here's an interesting thing. So far, the Intel Mac has actually been opening up faster, but as you can see, the M1 Pro has already opened up the 3D view and is already ready to start work. That is quite a bit faster, and this isn't that huge of a file. To be quite honest, this is actually a relatively small Archicad project. So while we wait for that one to open up, let's just go ahead and do a quick fly through and see how the frame rate is. Now, I do not have any kind of frame rate monitor on here. I don't know how to do that, but yeah, reasonably smooth, nothing special. And if we use the trackpad to zoom in and out, Okay, still very smooth. Can orbit. Okay, doing a little panning. All right. Sometimes not as responsive as I'd like, but it still works pretty well. Okay, so let's check the Intel. It's finally open, so let's do the, let's first do the fly through mode. Looks like it works okay. Not really all that much choppier or smoother. Seems fairly identical. Let's see the zoom out. Okay, a little bit laggier on the actual start of the zoom in, zoom out command. But other than that, you know, honestly, this is really GPU intensive, and you would expect a dedicated GPU to handle this just fine. The big difference here is the GPU on the M1 Pro. It's got 16 cores, should go faster, but again, remember this is having to translate it through the CPU from Apple Silicon to Intel x86 and back. So, all right, let's try something a little bit CPU intensive. Let's go ahead and open up the photo rendering settings. And the photo rendering, this is a very CPU intensive thing. So remember, it is going to have to convert from Apple Silicon to x86 and back for this process. So technically the Intel should have a slight advantage because it's optimized for that. So let's first make sure that we've got exactly the same settings. So we've got 1440 by 1080 for our pixels. And then for our settings, it's a custom scene, Cineware by Maxon. We're going to set these both to low just for the sake of time. And then let's see, lights are the same. Physical sky, partly cloudy, Archicad sun position. So we've got identical settings. The only difference is a slightly different angle of the view, but that should not affect render times. And now we're just going to go ahead and click start at exactly the same time. All right, now we're off to the races. And obviously I'm going to speed up this part.
Yeah, I think we all know. Well, wait, this is the perfect time to tell you to subscribe to Colorblind Architect.
Oh, yeah, and
For more.
and get a VPN. Just kidding, I'm not sponsored, so you can do whatever the heck you want.
And there are plenty of good places out there. Also, man, that bad boy is... That one is already...
Yeah, so we're 40 seconds in, and this one had already started showing the global illuminance, and it looks like it's pretty much already done with the global illuminance. It's now moving on to the rendering at 54 seconds. Same thing over here at 54 seconds. We're still on 46% of global illuminance, which is the first round of the 3 global illuminance run-throughs on this particular type of rendering. As you can see, this is churning on through pretty dang fast.
Still 100%.
We're at a minute 20. Still not even to the quick preview or rendering on this one. So Intel is lagging far behind. And another thing that you'll notice is the fan noise on the Intel Mac is already cranking up. It's not super loud yet, but it is getting louder. As a directional mic, so you'll need to point the directional mic straight at it, so kind of like that. Okay, so the rendering is already done on the M1 Pro. As you can see, 1 minute and 46 seconds. Now I could be doing a screen recording that would be helpful, I'm sure, but...
It just stopped the recording.
Okay, we're still waiting on the Intel Mac, and listen to that jet engine.
Remember that meme I showed you?
Yeah, that's really loud. Maybe we'll cut it in on this part. And then let's look at the M1 Pro, and you can see it's already done. And
the speedy fast time of 146.
yeah, there you go.
That's speed fast.
So do we keep waiting? Yeah, we keep waiting. We're at 3 minutes already on the Intel.
And it's not even 25% done.
Now, in all fairness, I did the same test on my iMac Pro at work. That one has a 16 gig AMD Radeon Vega graphics card, and it also has a latest, like a latest gen i9 Intel processor, 8 cores, Xeon level, so it's not the cheap one, it's the high end. That one actually beat the M1 Pro by about 10 seconds on the rendering.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a laptop.
And to be clear, this is the late 2016 model, so obviously it's been around for 5 years now. I've beat this thing up quite a bit, doing a lot of renderings, a lot of Archicad use. So this thing has actually been a pretty good workhorse for me for many years. Even though I do tend to use the desktop computer way more than I use the laptop, just because the desktop tends to be faster. But the fact that this can almost keep up with a really high-end iMac Pro, that's game changer for me. I can be anywhere now and do high performance work. So this is a huge improvement. We are still waiting. We're at 4 minutes and 30 seconds on the Intel MacBook Pro.
Close.
Yeah, almost there. We're at 92%, and post-processing, and we're done at just a shave under 5 minutes for the Intel. So 4 minutes and 59 seconds. Okay, so if you liked that, let's move on to kind of your normal daily work, because let's be honest, if you're an Archicad user, you already know that you can use Twinmotion. Why the heck would you use Archicad for your renderings? They're okay, but they don't look as good as using Twinmotion or Lumion. They're a lot easier to use. This takes so much time to do these renderings. So let's move on to the next test, which is going to the first floor view in the model view. These should be on the same layer sets. They both kind of took a couple seconds to generate. Now let's see how they pan. Okay. Are you still recording?
Yeah.
How about you hold it up to the screen as I'm showing you, instead of actually hold it like this.
Sorry.
Okay, so if we pan, we can see it's, a little bit choppy, but it's mostly smooth. Okay, let's move on to the Intel. Okay.
A bit choppy.
But not noticeably so. I mean, they're both just fine. I did also, just for reference, test both of these on a very large project, a 285 unit apartment building. And
that's pretty large.
That one is a gigantic Archicad file. The Intel MacBook Pro did not even open up the file. It could not handle it. With 16 gigs of shared RAM for the M1 Pro, it was able to open it up, and there was a little bit of lost polygons and lost stuff when I was orbiting and moving around in 3D. But considering it's a laptop with only 16 gigs of RAM, that is highly impressive. So let's move on to the next test, which is the building elevation sheet. So, okay, you see that took about 3 seconds. So let's do the same thing on the Intel Mac. All right. So about 5 seconds for the Intel Mac to do that. So let's go ahead and zoom in, because our next test is going to involve using a feature of Archicad 25 that's actually a really cool feature that I've been really happy with, and that is using colored elevations using surface textures like you use in 3D. So to get there, we go into the elevation selection settings. We're going to go to the uncut fill, change that to surface texture fill shaded. And then I'm also going to turn on the shadows just because, okay? And then on the Intel Mac, I'm going to go ahead and click update, and let's see how long that takes. Okay, so roughly 6 seconds, it seems like.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try that over here on the M1 Pro. We're gonna go to our elevation settings again. And then uncut fill, change that to surface texture fill shaded. And then we're gonna scroll on down, turn on the shadows, click OK. Then we're gonna right click on that viewport and click update. So pretty close. I mean,
yeah.
I'd say there was probably a negligible difference on that test. Okay. And now I'm going to show you a few of the other tests that I did with the iMac Pro, the Alienware Windows machine, and my Hackintosh, which is a also an Intel-based machine with an AMD graphics card, 8 gig. All right, here's my closing thoughts. Obviously, the M1 Pro is a huge improvement over the late 2016 MacBook Pro. I don't think anybody's doubting that. I mean, that's just, it almost goes without saying. Now, the thing that was really impressive to me, though, is the fact that Archicad, which is, like I said, still uses the x86 instruction set, so it's meant for Intel processors. And the M1 Pro actually met or beat most of the Intel processors. The only one that it did not beat was the one on the iMac Pro from 2019. Yes, the one with the i9 processor, 8 core, with 3.6 gigahertz of speed and a 64 gigabyte RAM installation and a 16 gigabyte AMD Radeon Vega. That was the only one of the computers that we tested that beat the M1 Pro MacBook. So definitely, even though Graphisoft is officially saying that you should, if you don't need a replacement right now, you should wait. They're also saying do not upgrade to macOS Monterey, which is version 12 of the macOS. They're saying don't upgrade to it. I have noted that on all of the computers that I tested it on, with Mac OS Monterey. Yes, there is consistent bugs that keep showing up. So that is a reason why you might want to wait. But to be honest, I've been using it. Really, the only major problem I've been having is that when I close down Archicad, it's always crashing. So long as you're saving your file before you actually close down, you're gonna be fine. But to be quite honest, yeah, I'd buy one because I did.
Yeah, you already bought one.
Yeah, and I freaking love this machine. Thank you for joining. And again, I'm the Colorblind Architect.
Subscribe.
Peace out.